The chandelier in the Whitfield estate dining room cost more than my mother's house. I knew this because my fiancé's sister, Caroline, had mentioned it twice during the tour, her voice carrying that particular melody of casual wealth, where obscene price tags are dropped like breadcrumbs. $47,000 of Venetian crystal hanging over a mahogany table that could seat 20. And tonight, for the engagement dinner, it would seat exactly that many. I stood in the guest bathroom on the second floor, pressing my palms flat against the marble countertop, staring at my reflection. The dress was new. A deep emerald silk that my best friend Priya had helped me pick out after 4 hours of increasingly desperate shopping. "You need to look like you belong," she'd said, zipping me up in the dressing room. "But also like you don't care if you belong." She was right. She was always right. But standing here, in a bathroom bigger than my childhood bedroom in Akron, Ohio, I wasn't sure any dress could bridge the distance between who I was and who the Whitfields expected me to be. My name is Nora Reeves. I'm 29. I teach 4th grade at a public school in Brooklyn. And 6 months ago, the man I loved, Graham Whitfield, got down on one knee at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden with a ring that made me dizzy and a speech that made me cry. I said yes before he finished the second sentence. That was the easy part. Everything after that had been a slow, creeping education in what it means to marry into a family that measures people in net worth and last names. My phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "We're here. Dad's trying to figure out the valet situation. He keeps saying he can park himself. LOL. You look beautiful, honey, I just know it." I smiled, but my chest tightened. My parents had driven 4 hours from Ohio. My dad, Ray, had taken a rare day off from the auto body shop he'd run for 30 years. My mom, Diane, had bought a new dress from JCPenney and called me 3 times to ask if it was appropriate. They were good, honest, salt-of-the-earth people who had given me everything they had, which was never much in dollars but was infinite in the ways that actually mattered. And I was terrified of what tonight would do to them. A knock on the bathroom door. "Nora? You hiding?" Graham's voice, warm and a little amused. I opened the door. He stood there in a navy suit, his dark hair freshly cut, looking like someone who'd been born knowing which fork to use, which he had. His smile faltered slightly when he saw my face. "Hey, what's wrong?" "Nothing, just nerves." He pulled me into a hug, his chin resting on my head. "It's just dinner. My parents, your parents, some family friends." Low-key. Nothing involving his mother, Patricia Whitfield, had ever been low-key. But I didn't say that. I kissed him and said, "Let's go." The dining room was already filling when we came downstairs. The Whitfield side moved through the space with the ease of people who'd spent their lives in rooms like this. Graham's father, Douglas, a retired investment banker with a handshake like a vice and a laugh that sounded rehearsed, was holding court near the fireplace. Caroline and her husband, a hedge fund something named Trent, were examining the seating cards at the table. And there, at the center of it all, was Patricia. She wore ivory cashmere, pearl earrings, and a smile that could cut glass. She ran the household, the family foundation, the social calendar, and, if I was being honest, Graham. Not with cruelty exactly, but with a gravitational pull so powerful that everything in the Whitfield orbit bent toward her approval. She'd been cordial to me. Always cordial. But cordiality from Patricia was like sunlight through a window, warm on the surface, but you could never quite open the glass. I spotted my parents near the entrance, and my heart cracked a little. My dad was tugging at his tie, a rental from the same place he'd gotten his prom tux in 1987. My mom was clutching her purse with both hands, her eyes wide, scanning the room the way you scan a foreign airport when you don't speak the language. I went to them. "You look amazing," I said, hugging my mom. She smelled like the lavender lotion she'd used my whole life. "Oh honey, this house," she whispered. "It's like a museum." My dad shook Graham's hand with his usual firm grip. "Quite a spread, son. Your folks sure know how to throw a party." "All my mother," Graham said, and something in the way he said it, a slight tightness, told me he too was bracing. Patricia glided over. "Raymond. Diane. How lovely." She air-kissed my mother, who froze slightly, unsure of the protocol. The drive wasn't too ghastly, I hope? Ohio is such a trek. Not bad at all, my dad said, grinning. Diane slept half the way. I had the whole road to myself. Patricia's smile didn't waver, but her gaze dropped to my mother's dress for half a second. It was fast, surgical, and devastating. I saw it. My mom didn't, or pretended she didn't. Well, let's get everyone seated, Patricia said, clapping her hands once, a hostess command disguised as enthusiasm. Here's where the night turned. The seating arrangement. Patricia had organized it herself, overriding the caterer, the event planner, and Graham's gentle suggestion that our families sit together. It's about flow, she'd told him when he asked. You can't just cluster people. It's a dinner party, not a cafeteria. I'd seen the original layout the day before. My parents were at the main table with Graham and me, flanked by Douglas and Patricia and a few close family members. It made sense. It was an engagement dinner. Both families, together, at the center. But as we approached the table, I saw that the calligraphy place cards had been rearranged. The main table now seated Graham and me, his parents, Caroline and Trent, Patricia's college roommate Bunny, and Douglas's business partner and his wife. My parents' cards were gone. I felt the ice form in my veins. I scanned the room, found them. Table 4. In the far corner, next to the kitchen door, wedged between Graham's elderly great-aunt, who was half-deaf, and a couple I'd never met. Graham, I said quietly. My voice was steel wrapped in silk. Where are my parents sitting? He looked. His brow furrowed. That's not right. They were with us. They were. I turned toward the main table where Patricia was already settling into her chair, smoothing her napkin with practiced grace. I need to talk to your mother. Nora, let me handle it. I'll just know. The word came out harder than I intended. I'll handle it. I walked to Patricia. I didn't rush. I didn't smile. I pulled out the empty chair beside her and sat down. Patricia, my parents aren't at this table. She took a sip of water, unhurried. I made some adjustments. The conversation dynamics work better this way. Your parents are perfectly comfortable at their table. Miriam is a wonderful conversationalist. Miriam is 91 and can't hear without her hearing aid turned up. I kept my voice low, but every word was aimed. This is our engagement dinner. My parents should be sitting with us. That was the plan. Patricia set her glass down. Nora, I adore your parents. I do. But this is a curated evening. The Aldridges are here. The Fentons. These are people who move in certain circles. Your father is a lovely man, but he spent 10 minutes telling Douglas about a carburetor. A carburetor, Nora. At a Whitfield dinner, she said it like my father had committed a felony, like his hands, scarred and calloused from 30 years of honest work, were an embarrassment to her tablecloth. And your mother, bless her heart, she's been holding that purse like a life preserver all evening. I'm doing them a kindness, frankly. They'll be more relaxed with people who are more. Their speed. Their speed. The words landed like a slap. I stood up. Graham, he was there in 3 steps, reading my face like a weather report. What happened? Your mother moved my parents to a back table because they're not sophisticated enough for the Aldridges. His jaw tightened. He looked at Patricia. Mom, we talked about this. Graham, darling, don't be dramatic. It's seating. It's not a political statement. It is a statement, I said. It says my family isn't good enough to sit at the same table as yours. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Not anger exactly. Annoyance. The annoyance of a woman who was not accustomed to being challenged in her own dining room. You're being oversensitive, Nora. This is how these things are done. I looked at Graham. This was the moment, the fulcrum. He could stand with me, or he could fold. He ran a hand through his hair. Nora, maybe we can just what? Find a compromise. Move a couple of chairs. Add seats to this table. There's no room, Patricia said smoothly. The table is set for 10. Then remove Bunny, I said. Or Trent. My parents take priority over your college roommate at my engagement dinner. Patricia's face went rigid. That is incredibly rude. What's rude? I said. And now I wasn't whispering, is treating my parents like second-class guests in a room full of strangers because my father works with his hands and my mother shops at JCPenney instead of Bergdorf's. A hush had started to spread. The nearby conversations dimmed. Heads turned. Graham stepped closer, his hand on my arm. Nora, please, let's step outside and figure this out. I don't want to step outside. I want my parents at this table. I looked past him, and I saw them. My mom and dad, standing near table 4, watching us. My mom's face was tight, with that particular expression I'd seen 100 times growing up, the one she wore when a bill came that she couldn't pay, when someone at my school said something about our car, when life reminded her that we were always just a little bit less than. My dad put his hand on her shoulder. Steady. Protective. Resigned. And he caught my eye and gave me the smallest shake of his head. Don't, the gesture said. It's okay. We're fine. But it wasn't okay. And they weren't fine. And I was done pretending. I looked at Graham one more time. Are you going to fix this? He looked at his mother, then at me. Then at the table full of people watching us. Can we just get through dinner? He said, his voice low and pleading. We'll address it tomorrow. I promise. Just tonight, let's not what? Not embarrass you? Not embarrass her? He flinched. That's not what Your mother just told me my parents aren't good enough to sit at a dinner celebrating our marriage, and your response is let's get through it. That's not a compromise, Graham. That's a surrender. And it's not yours to make. I turned away from him. I walked to the head of the table where a champagne flute sat untouched beside Patricia's plate. I picked it up. I picked up a knife. And I tapped the glass. The ring cut through the room like a bell. Every conversation stopped. Every face turned toward me. 20 pairs of eyes, curious, expectant, some already sensing the incoming detonation. Thank you all for being here tonight, I said. My voice carried clearly, steady and strong, fueled by something deeper than anger. This was supposed to be a celebration of two families coming together. That's what an engagement dinner is. Two families meeting, merging, learning to love each other. I paused. But I've just learned that one family at this dinner doesn't consider the other family worthy of sitting at the same table. The silence was absolute. Patricia's face drained of color. Graham closed his eyes. My father, I continued, has worked 6 days a week for 30 years. He taught me to change a tire, to balance a checkbook, and to never, ever look down on someone for how they earn their living. My mother raised 2 kids on a teacher's aide salary, packed lunches every morning, drove a minivan with 200,000 miles on it, and never once complained. They drove 4 hours today to sit at this table, and they were moved to the back of the room because someone decided they weren't polished enough for the guest list. I set the glass down. I looked directly at Patricia. I will not marry into a family that treats mine like an inconvenience. I will not spend my life apologizing for where I come from, and I will not teach my future children that love has a dress code. I pulled the ring from my finger. It came off easily, as if it had been waiting. I placed it on the table in front of Graham. I'm sorry, I said to him, and I meant it. But if you can't stand up for my family at a dinner table, you won't stand up for them anywhere, and I deserve someone who will. I walked to my parents. My mom was crying, silently, her hand over her mouth. My dad's eyes were red, but his jaw was set. Come on, I said, looping my arm through my mother's. Let's go home. We didn't speak for the first 40 minutes of the drive. My dad drove. My mom held my hand in the back seat. The highway was dark and infinite. Finally, my dad said, I'm proud of you, kid. And my mom squeezed my hand and whispered, You were magnificent, I cried then. Not for Graham, for the future I'd just incinerated, for the simplicity I'd lost, for the terrifying, exhilarating freedom of choosing myself. By the time we reached Ohio, my phone had 47 missed calls. Graham, Patricia, Caroline, numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it off and slept in my childhood bed for 13 hours. Priya arrived the next afternoon, having driven from Pittsburgh with 2 bags of takeout and what she called her crisis kit, which was a legal pad, a laptop, and a very expensive bottle of wine. She listened to the whole story without interrupting, eating pad thai with chopsticks and nodding in a way that told me her mind was already 3 steps ahead. "Okay," she said when I finished. "First, you're not crazy. Second, we need to control this before Patricia does. A woman like that doesn't just lose. She rewrites history. Priya was a communications strategist. She handled crises for a living. Within 2 hours, she had a plan. No social media engagement. All communication through a lawyer she'd recommend. Documentation of everything. And most importantly, my narrative, told on my terms. You're not the crazy fiancé who made a scene. You're a woman who stood up for her family. That's the story. That's the only story. She was right." Over the next week, Patricia's version began to circulate through the social circles that mattered to her. Nora had a breakdown. She's always been emotionally volatile. The poor girl was overwhelmed by the occasion. Graham texted, he emailed, he called. Each message was a variation of the same desperate plea. "I'm sorry. I should have spoken up. I know that now. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. Not because I hated him, but because I knew myself well enough to know that his voice, soft and sorry, could undo weeks of conviction in 30 seconds. The legal letters started 2 weeks later. Not from Graham, from Patricia's attorney. A politely threatening letter about the ring, which I'd left on the table, and which was apparently a family heirloom valued at $90,000, and about certain financial commitments the Whitfield family had made toward the wedding. They wanted reimbursement. Priya's lawyer friend, a woman named Dana who spoke in calm, lethal sentences, responded with a letter that made the Whitfield attorney call back within the hour. "We are prepared to cooperate fully," Dana wrote, "provided that the Whitfield family retracts all defamatory statements made about Ms. Reeves and issues a formal acknowledgement that the engagement was dissolved due to irreconcilable differences in family values. Should this matter proceed to discovery, we are prepared to introduce testimony and documentation regarding the discriminatory treatment Ms. Reeves and her family experienced, which may be of interest to the media and to the various charitable boards on which Mrs. Whitfield currently serves." The letters stopped. 3 months passed. I went back to teaching. My 4th graders didn't care about Venetian chandeliers or seating charts. They cared about fractions and whether I'd let them have extra recess. It was healing in a way nothing else could be. I found a rhythm. School, evenings with Priya or other friends, weekends in Ohio with my parents. My dad started teaching me woodworking in his garage, something I'd never had patience for as a kid but now found meditative. I built a bookshelf. It was crooked. I loved it. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in March, Graham showed up at my school. He was waiting by the entrance when I came out, holding an umbrella and looking like he hadn't slept in a week. "Before you say anything," he said, "I'm not here to ask you back. I know that's done. I know I lost the right." I stood there, rain misting my face. "Then why are you here?" "Because I need you to know what happened after you left. And because I owe you the truth about something." We went to a coffee shop 2 blocks away. He talked. I listened. After the dinner, he'd confronted his mother. Not the gentle, conflict-avoidant Graham I'd known, but something harder, sharper, broken open by what he'd witnessed. He told her that what she'd done was unforgivable. She told him I was common, and that he'd thank her someday. He moved out of the family brownstone. He got a therapist. He started working at a legal aid nonprofit instead of the family investment firm. Patricia, he said, was furious. She'd tried everything: guilt, money, social pressure. When none of it worked, she froze him out entirely. "I'm functionally disowned," he said, stirring his coffee without drinking it. "And it's the clearest I've felt in my entire life." "I'm glad for you," I said, and I was. "But that doesn't change what happened." "I know." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This is what I really came to give you." Inside was a cashier's check for $12,000, made out to Raymond and Diane Reeves. "Your parents put money toward the wedding," Graham said. "Deposits. Your mom's dress, the hotel they booked. My mother's lawyers never would have reimbursed them, so I did. From my own account. I stared at the check. Graham, don't argue. It's theirs. They shouldn't lose a cent because my family is rotten. He stood up. That's it. That's everything. He paused at the door. The man at the dinner who said, "Let's just get through it. That's not who I want to be anymore. I don't know if I'll ever fully get there, but I'm trying. You showed me what it looks like to choose the hard right over the easy wrong. In front of 200 people. In a dress. With a champagne glass. A small, sad smile. It was the bravest thing I've ever seen." He left. I sat there for a long time, holding the check, watching the rain. My mom cried when I gave it to her. My dad tried to refuse it. I told him it wasn't charity, it was a debt repaid. He looked at the check, then at me, and nodded. A year later, I was named Teacher of the Year for my district. It was a small ceremony in a school auditorium, plastic chairs and sheet cake, 1,000 miles from the Whitfield dining room. But my parents were in the front row. My dad was in his favorite flannel. My mom was recording on her phone with the camera accidentally pointed at the ceiling for half of it. Priya was there, and next to her was someone new. His name was Marcus, a firefighter from Queens, who I'd met at a community fundraiser when he'd accidentally knocked over an entire table of baked goods, and then spent 20 minutes helping me clean frosting off folding chairs. He was funny, steady, and completely unimpressed by money or status. The first time he met my parents, he and my dad disappeared into the garage for 2 hours and emerged covered in sawdust, arguing about the best type of wood stain. My mom had looked at me across the kitchen and mouthed, "Keep him." I was making my acceptance speech, short, unrehearsed, just gratitude, when I saw my dad in the front row. He was crying. Not the restrained, stoic tears of a man who hides his emotions. Real, open, proud tears. And I realized something. Every chandelier in the world could come crashing down. Every Whitfield and every Patricia could line up and tell me I wasn't enough. And it wouldn't matter. Because the man who taught me what love looks like was sitting in a plastic chair in a school auditorium, crying because his daughter built a life that made her happy. That was table one. That had always been table one, and no one would ever move him from it again.